How's that look?
That looks good. Thanks. Great. So welcome everybody, and thanks for coming today. We're really excited to be able to share some of the work we've been doing recently on Mycelia Mapping, and feel like it can be very helpful for you and your community and your work. And so our agenda this morning is going to start with talking a little bit about understanding emergent strategy and how mycelia create resilience in the natural world, because we're going to use that to sort of help to look at building some patterns of resilience for ourselves. And we're going to share the Mycelia mapping process and workshop the personal mapping with you. So if you could make sure you have pencil and paper or have a browser available. And then after that, we're going to look at the watershed scale, how these tools can be used to make change at that level. So Lindsay, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning. Hi, I'm Lindsay Rayban, co-owner of Ecological Design. And I've been with Paula in Ecological Design since 2005. I co-teach a regenerative farm design course for the last 7 years with Mastodon Valley Farm. I am originally from Nebraska and have been living in Minnesota and Wisconsin for the last couple decades. And I currently live in Western Wisconsin, Somerset, traditional lands of Anishinaabe and Dakota.
So I'm Paula, and I grew up on a farm in northwestern Iowa. It was a very diverse farm when I was young, and like most of that area turned to corn and soybeans monocrops by the time after I left for college. So I left the farm when I was after high school, but sort of took with me a deep love of the land. And then in the early 90s, became really concerned about the loss of biological diversity, and sort of what could I do as an individual to help reverse that. And it set me on a journey where I ran into permaculture in the late 90s and decided that what I could do was to help people transform their landscape into something that was productive, growing food for people and wildlife, and started Ecological Design in 2000 to do just that. And so our team started out working in the Twin Cities in the urban areas because that's where we were living, working with urban farms, rooftop farms, homesteaders, homeowners. And then the late round, we sort of could see rapid climate change happening and decided that we wanted to sequester carbon on a larger scale and transition to more broadacre around 2010. And so that, to sort of help mitigate some of the impacts on larger scale. And so a couple of tools that I developed in the process that might be useful to you or helpful. One is a natural capital plant database, which is a database of about 2,500 plants that has ecological functions and human uses in them. So it's really helpful for designing cropping systems, for putting together really diverse polycultures of plants. And you can access it at permacultureplantdata.com. You know, another tool that we'll be talking a little bit about in this presentation is a book that I co-wrote, This Perennial Land, Third Crops, the Blue Earth, and the Road to Restorative Agriculture. So maybe just a little bit more about ecological design. You know, Lindsay and I are co-owners of the company that started back in 2000. We're a women-owned business and probably one of the few women-owned businesses working at broadacre scale in the United States. Our mission really is to outfit people on their journey of reconnecting, regenerating their land. So we do mapping, we do design, we do education, and we work with a variety of customers from urban and rural farmers, homesteaders, homeowners, campuses, community spaces. And a lot of our work was with women. And we approach our work really from a perspective of trying to integrate Indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and ongoing observation. And so we're trained in agroecology, permaculture design, holistic management, and regenerative agriculture. So it's a little bit about us. So why don't we get started on Mycelia Mapping?
Awesome. So just wanting to kind of ground us in this quote and kind of like, why are we doing what we're doing? Why are we presenting this body of work? And it's really when we walk our talk that we come into alignment with our vision and our choices and our actions. And we become responsible. So it's really empowering to become responsible. It's really empowering to come into alignment. It feels very authentic, and that you're really fulfilling all of your actions with integrity. So really like this quote because, taking responsibility for our gifts and our talents involves self-awareness, and it's a process, not a destination. So the way that we're coming into this mapping work is really about empowering land connection, and particularly working with women to do that. So another kind of like foundational aspect that we're coming into this mapping work really is around sovereignty. We have the lexicon of sustainability slide here for food sovereignty, but really is coming down to, what do we need and what practices are supporting the life sheds that we exist in, and how can we make those more abundant so that we have the power to decide, and we have the power to shape our community and our food system. So really, we're using mapping as a communication tool for sovereignty.
And so another of the building blocks we're working with is Emergent Strategy. And so, we know that change is constant and new things are constantly emerging. It's actually accelerating right now. And so how do we live in harmony and balance? How do we live a life where we meet our needs that aligns with our values? And how do we build regenerative culture? And regenerative culture means a lot of different things to different people. And there's this one definition that I particularly like, which is a regenerative culture is a culture that is consciously building the capacity of everybody in a particular place to respond and change. And so how do we build that capacity? And I think one of the tools I found particularly helpful is Adrienne Maree Brown's Emergent Strategy book, where she sort of synthesizes elements and principles of emergent strategy. And many of those, the elements actually are in the picture here. I'm going to talk just for a few minutes about each one of them. So fractal, which is at the center, is the relationship between small and large. That we transform ourselves, we transform the world. How we are at the small scale is how we are at the large scale as a culture. So it starts with us. Adaptive is sort of intentional adaptation, choosing actions to embrace life. Interdependence and decentralization. Our survival really depends on our relationships. Understanding our needs is really a first step to forming healthy relationships with others and being in interdependence. Non-linear and iterative, as I think we all know, transformation is a non-linear process. Resilience and transformative justice, the ability to be strong and healthy when bad things happen, learning the healing practices for ourselves and for others, and creating more possibilities. How do we move towards life, towards generating positive energy? So again, these are some of the foundational elements of living in emergence. And there's also a set of principles, which again are guides that I think underpin regenerative values. And I'll just briefly read through these. Small is good. Small is all. The large reflects the small. This is a reflection of the fractal element. Change is constant. Be like water, flow, adapt. There's always enough time for the right work. There's a conversation in the room that only these people at this moment can have. Find it. Never a failure, always a lesson. Trust the people. If you trust people, they will be trustworthy. This is a very important one. Move at the speed of trust. Focus on critical connections, not critical mass. It's a shift for most of us from how we naturally operate. Less preparation, more presence, and what you pay attention to grows.
Well, that last one, yes, where you focus your energy, where your energy flows. And we do this, moving at the speed of trust is so important for our work. We also talk about it as moving at the speed of relationship. And so again, we're using these mapping tools to bring these principles into our lives to increase alignment. So we keep on talking about mycelia mapping. What the heck does that mean? So first, we just wanted to briefly touch on mycelia, and all of you very well may already know that, but I just want to make sure that we're all on this operating off the same page because this is pretty vital to our work. So in permaculture, we talk a lot about patterns. So mycelia is a dendritic pattern, like our rivers, our veins, our lungs, our nerves, lightning, tree roots. You know, you get the idea that this photo down here on the right is that dendritic pattern. And patterns in nature mean how energy flows. The different shapes tell us how the energy flows. So we see the mycelial pattern as a very good distribution pattern, a very efficient distribution pattern in nature. And we're looking to mycelia as a mimic, a design shape that we can mimic to be a design driver for our mapping work, because nature already has this perfect pattern that exists. So why would we want to recreate a wheel? Paul Stamets, talks about how mycelium is the Earth's natural internet. The fractal fungal network of the actual mycelia, it's a neurological network for nature. Literally the way that plants speak to each other. There's many other ways, but this is a great way, particularly we're talking about, the fungal hyphae, which is mostly underground and not as visible. The fruiting body is what we see over here in this top right picture from Paul's fungi perfecti. But you see that fungal hyphae in the top left. That's the dendritic roots. Sometimes we'll see this above ground, but usually it's mostly underground. And most people think of mushrooms as their fruit, right? So Peter McCoy is probably one of my favorite writers and scientists. He wrote Radical Mycology. Highly recommend Radical Mycology if you don't know it. And mycology reminds us of herstory. It's the fungal queendom. So it's not lost on me that we're also channeling divine feminine when we're doing this work. So just to be real clear, mycelium is the vegetative part of the fungus. And it has this branching thread-like hyphae that we see right here. And they're vital in terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems for their role, mostly in decomposition of plant material. So they contribute to increasing our organic matter, releasing, processing in with carbon dioxide. We have an ecto and an indo, and I won't go into it, but I just want you to understand there is so much importance with Earth's natural internet, so much so that we're designing a mapping system from it.
So our personal Mycelia mapping process, we do mapping as part of our business and rely on GIS and other technology to do that. So we started applying some of that mapping to our own personal lives and found these maps to be really empowering in understanding first our patterns and then understanding how to change them. And so we've worked hard to develop an open source Mycelia process that we'll be sharing with you now. And any level of computer skill works. Hand drawings work just fine too. So it's really accessible to everyone. And it starts with, there's basically 4 steps, which we're going to go through today together. Create and reflect on your personal needs. Create and reflect on your personal values. Then we're going to map our life sheds. And a life shed is really the places where you live your life and meet your core needs, you know, for food, fiber, fuel, medicine, family, fun, community. So again, it's those places, that domain of activity where you live your life. So we'll be mapping that, and then we're going to geolocate it on a map.
Awesome. So starting with the needs, you know, you've probably heard of a hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what we're looking over here on the right. Essentially, at our base, we have kind of our food and our safety and our security. And as you move up, next level is kind of like friendship and belonging, and we have esteem for ourselves and others. And when those needs are met, we can strive for more self-actualization. So that's a take. That's one take on it. This is on the left, Manfred Max Neef's fundamental human needs. It's often taught, and really he agrees with Maslow. Subsistence is the primary, and then the other 8 come in after that in no order per person. So, you know, really just looking at our needs helps us identify our social design. But it actually, you know, is manifested in the way that we live our lives every day, the patterns of our lives. So that's why we want to really reflect on this. You know, these needs have been influenced by Indigenous Blackfeet Nation, which usually doesn't get acknowledged when we're talking about these anthropologists. And so we have a nuanced kind of version here that we want to show. And then we want everyone to kind of take a minute to reflect. You want to talk about this one, Paula?
Yeah, so this is a kind of a consolidated core needs list. It's got, let's see, I'm having a hard time reading it, Lindsay. Can you maybe take this one?
Sure. So we have love, sorry if the text is too small. So in the bold one is kind of the need and what that might include. So it's a bit more expanded and nuanced than the traditional anthropologists. And this is adopted from Maslow and Max Neef, and also our friend Bridget O'Brien at Garden Juju Collective. So love, oxygen, connection, fuel, byproducts, livelihood, protection, rest, well-being, water, movement, and spirit. And so these may or may not, these may resonate with you a little bit more than the previous ones. And so we would just like you to, on your notepad or on your computer, reflect on your needs. Maybe write down, you know, maybe your top 3 to 5 that come to mind. Because we're going to use this to build to our next step. So everyone,
yes, take a couple of minutes. Yeah.
And they don't have to be these ones. We're giving you examples of some good ideas. Just take another 30 seconds.
Lindsay,
Yes.
I have a question. Is the notepad supposed to be on my screen, or is that a tool?
Oh, I wish it was a tool. No.
But we're just doing this on our own. Okay.
We can do this on our own, but thanks for mentioning that. If anyone wants to share their needs in the chat, we can use the chat as our notebook as well to share. Super appreciate you saying that. All right, so maybe we've got some top needs for our own personal self. And we're not going to reflect anything on them at this moment, but we will later.
So there's a variety of free tools that can help you. This particular drawing here is of a map that is done in Whimsical, which is a mind mapping tool. Miro is another tool from Google that's also free. They're free to a certain level. I think you can do like 5 different kinds of maps, and then you have to start paying, but it's a good place to start. And these maps there's privacy tied to this. You can share these maps. You can work together with another person, or they can be completely private. But these are, again, with Google My Maps, is where you actually take what you've hand drawn or drawn in Whimsical or Miro and geolocate it on a physical map. So we're going to be using these this morning.
Yeah, and more about the byproducts would be, I saw that comment in the chat, very directly, our urine and our human manure, even, hair, fur, but then also from anything that we might be doing in life that creates a byproduct, and then starting that recycling back to nature process. We find a lot of our energy in society is wasted by not acknowledging the byproducts. Mm-hmm. All right. Yes, so we're super pumped about these free tools. So we don't have to, be fancy, be designers with some fancy computer program. So we're looking for open source stuff. We're looking for free stuff, and how can the people be empowered? So we're excited about these tools.
Mm-hmm. And so this is kind of another diagram of Mycelia Map, where you'd have like your needs are around the map here. Things like recreation, personal growth, food, personal care, water, community. So again, that first step in the mapping is to ground in your core needs and values.
Awesome. So we just wrote our needs list, and now we want to take a couple minutes to write our values list. We had actually one of our team members do a demonstration example for us. And so on the left here, you see needs and how they were being expressed through recreation. So, but we still want to just think about values. It doesn't have to be related to any specific topic. So if everyone could take a couple minutes to write some values for yourself. In this example, social good, reducing ecological footprint, increasing health and wealth, increasing wisdom, expanding. So those are some of the values that he tuned into for this exercise. So if we can just take a minute and write down, also share in the chat if you feel open. They do not need to be connected to your needs. So just write values that you have for your life.
Mhm.
All right, so we have a needs list, and we have a values list. And again, we like to put it in a mind map format, but you don't have to do that, but we just wanted to share that with you because it is really helpful as you add to it or to visually communicate it to friends and family. Love these ones.
Yes, those are great.
From Heather: compassion, continuous learning, environmental awareness, fairness, family health, integrity, making a difference, teamwork, and well-being. It's a great list. So I saw Karen's needs list: rest, well-being, movement, rest. Ooh, rest. Okay. So now we're going to kind of show you how we all can geolocate, start to get a visual map to begin expressing our own life sheds and our own kind of Mycelia map. So I will switch over to my Google really quick. Denise: strong family ties, self-care, caring for community, fairness, and social justice. Beautiful. All right.
Great.
So first step is go to Google My Maps. Okay, so literally I'm typing Google My Maps into my browser and I find it. So Google My Maps, here we go. And we just click Get Started. And we click Create a New Map. So if you're familiar, if you might use Google for driving directions or whatnot, this format might be kind of familiar to you, but we're just creating our own map. So for this, maybe we're going to call it, Paula, maybe we'll use you.
Yeah, we can use me as an example.
Okay, so we'll say for this one, Paula, life sheds. Okay, so we just titled it. So I just clicked on that, and changed its title just to orient ourselves. We can add layers here. And then you can also zoom out and preview what you did. So this first layer, I clicked on it to change its name. Okay, and we want to start mapping. When we're talking about our life sheds, we're talking about like our patterns. So sometimes it's easier to think about like, what do you do for your week? What's your pattern for the week? Because we're really looking at where we're traversing, and then we're going to reflect how that's, aligned with our needs and our values. So what do we do? So, typical Saturday morning, maybe, or Saturday, Paula.
Well,
Maybe
Saturdays are often a day for getting food. So maybe start with some food map.
Start with some food map. Okay. Yes. That's good. And I'm going to say also, so we're orienting ourselves. I'm just going to add a home layer. Sorry, first. So we're like operating out of a base. We'll just do a general one. Okay. So
maybe just say Amory, Wisconsin as a home layer or something like that.
Great. Okay. So we're going to add a layer and food. So where are we going? So I'm changing the title and I'm going to say food. And I say, can you tell me a place? What's a couple places you like to go get food?
Yeah, Stillwater Food Co-op.
Okay. What else? If you're going to go out to eat, where might you go?
Farm Table Restaurant.
This is like right there.
And then also Turnip Rock CSA.
So see, I just typed in this bar up here, what I'm looking for, and it finds it, right? And my little marker, what I do, because I'm in the food layer, I just add it to the map. Okay. You said farm table.
Mhm.
I'm going to add it to the map. Said Stillwater Co-op. It's called River Market.
River Market, yeah.
There we go. Found that marker. I'm going to add it to the map. Okay, so you can see how very quickly we can populate something. How about I'm going to add a different layer. How about like goods or materials? Where might you go to buy some things?
Yeah, the Countryside Co-op, we go for stuff for the chickens.
Okay, cool. Countryside Co-op.
Ace Hardware is another place.
Click on the marker, add to map. Sure, Ace Hardware. Amory. Okay. Okay, so we're starting to get a few, and do you want me to do any other ones, or should we do, is that?
Sure, we can maybe do a really quick recreation one, just put a couple points in for that.
All right, let's add a recreation layer. So I'm saying add layer, click on the untitled. Where do you want to recreate it?
Let's see, what's it called? Seven Lakes Trail or something like that. It's a bike trail.
Seven Lakes Trail, add to map. Boom, shows up over here in the key. So, okay, so now I'm going to go back over here and you see these where it says individual styles. So I'm just going to call them all uniform style. This isn't really too vital, but it helps us understand what we're looking at. So I'm going to color them green. It just changes the color of the marker. Or, I could make it an icon. So this is kind of fun. This changes how you're looking at the map. Okay, so I'm just going to call food goods. I'm going to call it brown. Recreation. I'm going to call it purple. Okay. And then down here at the base map, you can just, you can see different ones. So I like the aerial imagery. All right, so I am zooming out and I'm looking at, you don't have a ton to populate, but you can kind of see. The one in Stillwater is a little far away, but at least these ones are a little bit clustered together. So we've added our points. And now we kind of want to look at the pattern, right? Because we're trying to find our mycelial pattern of our life shed, of a pattern that we might be doing and going, and what ecosystems are we traversing within that pattern. So a good way to look at that a little bit more closely is this right here. You can see this key up here. We can pan with the hand. You can add a marker. That's important to say. We use this a lot for, like, if I find springs, for example, if you're mapping springs or if you're mapping places that don't have addresses. So like I could add a marker right here. I'm going to call it spring. Okay. All right, so there's my spring. So you got a marker, and then right here, draw a line. So this is a super cool part where you can add a line or a shape. You can add a driving route. You can add a biking route. You can add a walking route. So now you can connect your points and kind of see, again, it's really focusing in on where these life sheds are. So I'm going to click add a line or shape. And just for this example, kind of connecting in this in this example, I'm manually connecting with my lines. This is my very like small kind of life shed shape for Amory. If I would pull one of those lines over to the still water, then you'd see, you know, a much bigger life shed that we're talking about, starting to expand into this area that Paula traverses in her life sheds. Last couple of things I just want everyone to be aware is that this is private information. And so if you want to share your map, you can share it with a link. So you would click anyone with this link can view it. And then you share that link. If you want to make it public because you're organizing something, you can make it public. So that's really important. And then the last one is that you can export this. This is really important. So I clicked on these 3 dots on the left and I can export it to my Google Earth. I can export dots. If you had a bunch of markers, like I was saying, I mark springs that I find, or say they're members of my sustainable farming chapter or whatnot. You could have all the markers of everybody's and you could import. So this is the export. But on the base map, if I'm adding a layer, see the import is right there below the title. And you could import any Excel spreadsheet with addresses or geolocations, your GIS, if you're using a GIS on your phone or not, that's what the GPX file is, or from Google Earth, you could export. So you can upload anything into this, again, which is pretty radical. We've only been able to do this really in our design programs. Okay. Get off of that. And then I wanted to show you an example of a map that we have here. Carol is asking, can you get rid of the locations that are showing up like the gun club so they don't show up? It's really related to like a zoom in, zoom out scale. So they're annoying. I agree. And you can manipulate it a little bit based on when you zoom in and zoom out. When you preview, that's the other thing. When you preview, those other ones go away. Only the ones that you marked show up. So when you preview the finished map. Good question. Okay, so here we're looking at Polk County in Wisconsin. It's Western Wisconsin County that we work with a lot of clients in. And it's a hotspot for emerging farmers and regenerative agriculture. So a lot of recreation here. So anyway, we're looking at that and started to just try to, look at, started to just see who is in this area because we want to do some organizing, we want to support some ecosystems here that might be threatened. So we started to add in, and I just want to show you how we use this and why it's important. So some livestock farms, we're also mapping some of our vegetable, dairy, other non-livestock farms. Some of these still have animals too. This is by no means comprehensive, but we just wanted to show you something that's in work, that's real. We're like, where's the local food being sold? So we're also looking at farm to table restaurants, right? Where's the farmers markets? Okay, so we're looking at the farmers markets. Those are the purple. And then where are we buying our, goods? Where's farm supply? Where are the cooperatives? Where are the nurseries? These are important things for us to get done, our lives done on the land, working with the land. Where are we getting our supplies? How are we supporting local, right? And then the base maps. So again, remember how I said when you add a layer, you can import whatever kind of information you want. So we added the watersheds, okay? So you can see what I imported was the watershed map of Wisconsin. And this is, I don't have the county line up here because the point of what we're doing is really we're organizing by watershed. And the United States of America is based on rectangles and squares and doesn't make any ecological sense, has nothing to do with topography or waters. And had we designed our states by waters, we probably won't be in the water wars in the current situation that we're in. But essentially, you know, our big thing is organizing by watershed, because everybody in your watershed, no matter what their political view, no matter what their family situation is, no matter if they're a farmer, if they have an off-farm job, they care if they're drinking clean water. And so it's a huge alignment that we see to help support our ecosystems and the health of ourselves and our families. So this one that we're in is the lower St. Croix watershed. The St. Croix River runs all along the left side here of, we can see the white outline. So everything is draining here to the St. Croix eventually, and then to the Mississippi, and then to the Gulf. And so it's very important to know what's going on in that watershed. And so there is 2 threats right now currently to this watershed. We have an industrial frac sand mine, which I labeled in red. It's right there in Osceola. And then we also have a proposed hog CAFO, also putting that in red up here in Trade Lake. And so we're using this to really find out who is going to be affected. If there's a spill, what farms will be affected, whose water will be affected. And it's been a great organizing tool. All right. Let's get back to our slides here. So we just learned how to geolocate our life sheds, our life patterns. And I'm still not screen sharing, sorry. There we go. Okay, so this is just another couple examples. Again, we showed you that the recreation needs from our colleague, Andrew, that he created. So then he also made this life shed. So they're a little hard to see here, but you can kind of see these dots. All around, wherever, you know, his family, friends, grocery, food, sports, recreation, and essential services. You know, so what we're seeing is where along the watershed map is his life happening. All right. And he added the lines. The lines then create, you know, vectors, basically polygons that we can see, okay, this is where the life sheds are. And then when you color them in, you can really see these layers of how they start to overlap. And all of the watersheds that his life is involved with, impacted by, and impacts, right? So you can see how this tool is really amazing. Do you want me to say anything else more on that, Paula?
No, but it really helps you sort of, again, it's a tool to help you understand what your patterns are, and then shift things if you want to be in more alignment with your values. It's been, from my own personal experience, going through this process has been extremely helpful in just highlighting those incongruities, you know.
Yes.
And vulnerabilities too. Again, vulnerabilities and where your system's fragile, you know, or
Exactly. Okay, so the last thing is kind of what we're going to do with this map is running these against it. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So again, it's like once you've got your sort of patterns laid down, there's this feedback that happens. And, you know, to kind of assess those patterns and shift them for better alignment or harmony in your life. So, you know, we came up with this list of core elements of regenerative culture, and there may be some things missing, but this is kind of our starting point. And I wanted to just touch on a few. One is, you know, relations of reciprocity. No community really exists without local and extended relationships. And reciprocity is really based on this give and take, centered on respect. So community networks like WFAN, women's circles, mentoring networks, mutual aid support networks, are all based on relations of reciprocity. Taking just another step further too, there's other types of reciprocity, those between people and the land, between people and animals, between animals and the land. So again, this is sort of a big element of what we look at as in regenerative culture. Community celebrations and rituals, the kind of coming together in community, celebrating community, rebuilding common spaces, bringing back some of the land-based celebrations and rituals that many of us have lost in our culture we're living in right now. Food sovereignty is a fundamental component. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but it's having control of your food system, both being able to eat the culturally important foods that you have, having access to them, knowing how to grow, harvest, process, and cook with them is all really critical to self-determination. Nature connection, access to land, the opportunity to be able to farm if you want to engage in nature, to be able to work with clean soil, engage with animals, see trees, walk in natural woodlands. Nature connection is very fundamental. Social justice, ensuring that everyone has equal access, equal rights to all the opportunities and privileges, respect, love, caring for all people. Elders and youth, a very fundamental component. We know communities aren't healthy when they're all of one age. So especially valuing and honoring elders, their wisdom, and youth for their openness, creating spaces and opportunities for people to connect, and extending forward to honoring future generations and backward to honoring our ancestors. Perennial economy, a long-term economy for the long term, growing on a foundation of regenerative agriculture, local foods, cooperative organization, healthy ecologies, clean air and water, and then last but not least, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health for all. So again, these are elements that we have seen in regenerative culture that can convert into looking at your personal food map, seeing how the relationships that you've established can shift a little bit. And I know for me personally, looking at my food map, what kind of came to light was the fact that a lot of my food relationships were based on exchanging money for food, and that those really aren't building regenerative culture as much as I would like to. And so there's some realignment that I can do here of exchanging more food with friends and neighbors, sharing more food, doing more foraging expeditions with children. So again, you can use this to help point to shifting patterns, to better align with what you think is important in your life and your community. So I want to just take maybe a few minutes right now for reflection on some of the projects that you are connected to. Are there ways you can see how Mycelia Mapping can help you and your community? If you could just maybe either share in chat, or I think can we do like a raise your hand and unmute you?
People can just unmute.
Yeah, okay.
If they want to.
That's
But
true. You can.
How would you like to use this, or how does anything come to mind? Yeah, about the alignment of these maps, needs, values, and life sheds. Just maybe just a minute, so because of
Just a
time.
minute, right? Yeah.
Yes, these are good questions. And we want to leave a little bit of time for questions at the end too. Just this most recent
Yeah.
one that came in, how do you come up with the categories? That's going to be, you can go a couple ways. You could do your needs, like how are you getting your needs? But what I found is easier when working with people is just to ask them, where do you go? And those categories will start to come. So where do I go? I'm going to go to my friend's house, and then I'll make a layer that's all my friends, for example, or I'm going to go to get my CSA pickup, go to the cooperative, or go to my go pick up my medicines, and then I would label those farms under food or farms. And so kind of just where are you going? And then think of what that general topic would be. And that translates into then that topic's life shed. Bosca says, I'm thinking that this could help us in our visioning for our farm to see others who have similar values and also where possible markets and future enterprises could be. Bingo.
Yeah.
We would love to see, in permaculture, we always talk about earth care, care for humans, and fair share. Where are we seeing those in our maps? Where are we seeing that social design, that economic design, and the ecological in our communities? I think that's huge, so powerful. Hillary, I love your ancestors question, and maybe we can speak to that at the end here. Okay, so I think we'll shift too, because we want to share a couple more kind of really exciting ways that we have been using these maps. But we prioritize sharing how we think we could do it personally, and you can be empowered to do it yourself. So we prioritize that to be at the beginning of this presentation here.
Yes, so now we're going to shift a little bit to talking about, as Lindsay said, some other strategic uses for these maps. And this is actually where we started on more of a watershed scale, not a personal scale. And so, our mapping journey really started back in 2003 with the Perennial Lands Project, where we had a goal of creating pathways for transitioning corn and soybean country to something that was more restorative, regenerative, and finding ways to get perennials on the ground. So one of the things from that project that was created was a book called This Perennial Land, Third Crops, Blue Earth, and Road to Restorative Agriculture, which was sort of a vision document and also an advocacy piece looking at who was doing what on the land and what was possible. And we centered that work in the greater Blue Earth watershed, which is sort of this area in south central Minnesota and north central Iowa, one of the most intensively cropped areas of the country that feeds into dead zone down the Mississippi River. And there were 3 watersheds there that we were working with. And soon we realized that we really needed some maps, a new kind of map that would show where were the opportunities on the land for perennial crops, perennial buffers. And so we developed a set of criteria and mapped things like current land uses, water bodies, highly erodible soils, where the current conservation areas were, and worked with a number of partners, DNR and NRCS, SWCD, to sort of ground truth it. And you can see on the map here, the areas that are sort of the hatch marks are the opportunity areas for perennial crops or wildlife corridors and riparian buffers. So you kind of get a picture, even this like really what's right now, very intensely farmed landscape that almost 25-30% of the land really needs to be in perennials. So again, it's a different, it gave us the capacity to like look at the land differently and consider opportunities. And so after we wrote the book, we also realized that another step was dealing with the community. And so we hosted these community visioning sessions with a number of watershed groups and women caring for the land to use the map and help people think about 20 or 30 years from now, what do you want your watershed to be? What's possible? You know, what from the past, what has been lost from the past? And we began to see that, again, there was a lot of energy around it. And we could sort of start to see the power of these mapping tools in terms of letting people step back and think about the future and shaping the future in a different way. And so the other piece that came out of it was we also saw the need for some organizational mapping, more like on the social level, not just the ecological level. There were a lot of nonprofits working in the watershed, and they all had their own different projects and activities. And often there was two different organizations were talking to the same landowner, the same farmer, and they didn't even know each other, was in conversation with them. So being able to like do organizational mapping was really important and very much an eye opener, because people again have been in their silos, silos of how they work, who they work with, silos of how they think about the land, what's possible. And so, this was kind of the foundation for where we've taken the map since then. So
incredible work. So fast forward to 2019. And here we are again in Polk County. We're looking at Western Wisconsin, and we're thinking we need to innovate more. We need to communicate more. We need to help people decrease their cancer rates and know their water. And we need to protect the land. And so as things are increasing, the threats are increasing, how are we going to use our skills with mapping and design to empower this community? So Polk County, you can see this is the watershed map up here on the right of Wisconsin, the large basins on the left or on the right, and then the smaller basins and watersheds that we're organizing within. And so here, it's on the border of Minnesota, right? So it's right on the border of Minnesota. And we're talking about, this is the county right here. What we're looking at with the red and the orange and the yellow is marked by the DNR about priority watersheds. So red is priority watershed, which means it's not doing so good. In fact, it's doing the worst. And so they're identified by a number of things, which are probably too hard to see here on the watershed ranking on the right. But most states and counties have this, and you can look this up. So I encourage you to find out what your watershed ranking is. And if you don't, then work with DNR to make sure that they are doing that. But this is free information to the public. So we're talking about phosphorus loading, impaired waters, number of partner groups that are located in the area, the percent of water quality management, waterfowl areas, where the watershed ends in a lake. It includes the stream order. It includes, which tells us a lot about the cleanliness of the water too. It includes the percent of agricultural land cover, a number of potential livestock facilities, groundwater contamination or susceptibility. It's that lake development, highly erodible soils. It also includes outstanding and exceptional waters and depth to bedrock. So watershed ranking is really important. Okay, so we looked at this, and we have a number of clients in here in this 121, 124. We have farms that we're working with. So we are concerned about this priority watershed in Polk. And then we pull down some more data. So here there's a Polk County Land and Water Resources and also the Wisconsin DNR. So again, you can find this information for yourself where you live. We are able to export this and create layers in our maps based on this so that we can start to get the ecological landscape as a communication tool in the map. So we're looking at soil associations. Okay, what kind of soil? How quickly do poisons or excessive fertility, fertilizer or manure runoff go into the water? That's what we're looking for at the soils. We're looking at land use. So where is the ag land? Where's the grass? Where's the open water? Where is the shrubland? And where is the towns or the urban development? Looked at prime farmland. mostly just indicator of soil class. We looked at groundwater susceptibility. That's really important to understand and where you live. And you can see there's some patterns here. And so we're starting to find as much data and as much patterns as possible and overlay them. The lay of the land here, you can see in some of the acres, 254,000 in forest. So there is a lot of trees and lakes. This is a highly previously glaciated area. And so we have a lot of water and trees and topography going on. The groundwater here is the sole source of drinking water in Polk County. And most of these, things were formed by, 12,000 years ago with the glaciers. And so we get a lot of really varying sediments. Almost every place we work with is fairly different. But the quality of health of people is directly linked to the quality of groundwater. And so we encourage you to find out what is the health of your groundwater. We're looking for arsenic and lead and manganese and nitrates. And right now for here, what these are telling us is like only 10% of Polk County wells exceed the standard for lead. 5% exceed, standard for manganese, 3% exceed the nitrates. 21% tested positive for coliform in their wells. Okay. And you can find out where all of those things are. We have a contaminated well map as well. So free data, lots of information can tell you about what's going on around you. And then you can use that to help you make your decisions. So here you can see it's just a little bit on like the people and what kind of crops are growing. Sorry, just saw the power on my computer is low. Lots to remember. Yes, we might have some slides available. And it is being recorded. Okay, so we took a lot of these layers and made opportunity maps, what we called opportunity maps. So we're really looking, so we used Google My Maps to be able to share these layers and started making trying to look for patterns, as many patterns as we could, particularly with the land use layers and the ecological layers, looking for patterns, okay? We looked at the ecological patterns. We're looking at the waters and the rivers. We're looking at sorry, my battery is not charging. I don't know why. So, not sure what's going on with that. Okay, it looks like it just plugged in, sorry. And the red is really what we're looking at. Those red areas here are contaminated wells. When you overlay your contaminated wells with the agricultural and the land use layers, you start to see which farms are making poor decisions for the earth and for the community. And this is not used to demonize anyone. This is used to empower us as a community to talk about the health of the land. Because again, water is this perfectly neutral thing that we can talk about because everybody really can get behind clean water and how to make it better. And so we love this county. They have a farmer-led watershed coalition, in fact. And those farmers are conventional farmers. They're growing corn and soy, they're growing crops, and they're learning how to increase their cover crops and how to support the Apple River watershed and some of our other rivers here. So we're also looking at where's the people and where are they doing things. So we started marking that and to see where in the watershed, the people that are doing things, particularly positive for the environment. So we have an ecological pattern, we have a social pattern. And what we're looking for, we did add a couple threats in there, but we're really trying to hone in on, is there an energetic point that actually might be opportunity area for us to build more work out of, to work with people and the land? Or is there, an area, an epicenter that would be better? So we're honing in, we're finding this lake seems like an opportunity. We started honing in on this water and on this body of water, which we all enjoy, and finding out some concerns about that, and that the coalition of the amount of people, the amount of regenerative farmers, the amount of some nonprofits and some local food supporters, and also people that live in other places that own properties here that also really care about the water, but they're not here as much. So we started overlapping that social data. See these little white squares? Those are parcel data. So we can all go to our county GIS website for free and find out like who's living where, right? You can see if they live in Montana and they own a farm that's being rented out here in Wisconsin. And so we also looked at that data to just see, okay, who is here that is really empowered to help make this Lake Wapagasset cleaner. So we saw this big opportunity area. And then we wanted to test our examples as we zoomed in. And so we ran this kind of computer program. It's just out of QGIS. If you're interested, if you're into the techie side of it, we're just using QGIS, which is open source, and trying to find these opportunity sheds. So if you think about your farm as a spore, or your homestead, whatnot, or your area that you're really concerned about, particularly because of an environmental issue, think of that as that epicenter, that spore right here. It's where that star is. And we're going to dendritically move out like a fungal hyphae as an organizer. So our organizing efforts to support this watershed or this ecosystem or what we might be working on, after we've mapped our points, we can start to see where the most important energy should go in order to support that original node. So this is a really interesting thing that we're sort of getting our chops on, and we're really excited to use in larger projects for restoration, that mycelial energy flow. Okay, and so there's a number of powerful examples, and we're going to say one more example here of how we use this map. I bet you have heard of Line 3 pipeline. Enbridge pipeline has been being fought since at least 2014 in Minnesota, in northern Minnesota, and it's basically the oil pipeline crosses 227 lakes and rivers in the Mississippi, including the Mississippi River. And it has about 760,000 barrels of tar sands oil flowing through it, including a lot of wetlands, which is where we have the indigenous food, the indigenous manomin wild rice that is extremely special and only grows here and is the sovereignty of the Anishinaabe people. And the pipeline runs through treaty territory and all of that. So how are we using maps to align with our values, to empower the community, to support the future ancestors? So here we're looking at this map, and we can see where all the wild rice is. We can see the treaty territory. These were created by Honor the Earth and by Stop Line 3. You can see where the oil pipeline is right here that we're talking about. And then it's the red one here going across. So early on in the organizing, Honor the Earth made the Google My Maps. And so you can do, it's a public map. So they uploaded that base map of the pipeline, okay, and then added the layers that we're contributing to. So where are the equipment pipe yards and the man camps? Where are the water crossings that the oil is going to cross the water? Where are the protector camps? All of that. And so you could just, where are the treaty boundaries? So they made these layers. Like, this is really smart. This is really good. This is really helpful. Okay. So you can check it out. It's up line 3. And so we thought, how can we help? How can we value add that? Okay. And is there a layer that could be missing? So this is the thing that we're always wanting to think about when we reflect on our maps. What could we add? What layer might we not be thinking about in the pattern that's important to this, particularly in environmental justice movements or in conservation efforts? You might look to an endangered species, right? Where's the map of those endangered species to help support an environmental justice issue? So we started on our process to see if we're missing anything. We started with water. So here, we're looking at the watersheds that are in the blue outlined by the black. We looked at ownership. Okay, who owns the land? Who's managing the land? So we looked at treaty and tribal. Treaty and tribal lands. The tribal land is in the orange here, and the treaty land is in the tan. Okay, so you can see where the pipeline strategically is going around tribal land, and mostly through treaty land and mostly through government land, public land, I mean. Okay, and then here, we're looking at, again, the public and the tribal lands. We start to see these strategic patterns. The red is the pipeline. And then state parks, wildlife management areas, state forests, and scientific natural areas where a lot of that pipeline is going through. And then we added another layer. We added the archaeological layer. This is data that you can go to the state office, Minnesota State Office of Archaeology, and added that layer, which is the light blue squares. Okay, so that's where there's documented archaeological areas. And as we zoomed in more, we see that there were archaeology areas right exactly where the pipeline is crossing the Mississippi River and the Willow River. So we were pretty surprised to find that out. And archaeology data is different in every state, but if you are a landowner or if you're a tribal historic preservation officer, you can request those documents immediately. And in some states that's more visible. So in Wisconsin, we have to jump through a few more hoops to find out this information. In Minnesota, you can go right to the website and see this information. But oftentimes people do not know this. They don't know to request this information. They don't know that this information exists. And it's really important to help protect the land. The lawyers were able to use some of our maps in the federal cases, and the pipeline is still being fought. But this is just another example of how you can be empowered using maps as a communication tool, overlaying these layers and finding the patterns, which we call Mycelia Mapping. So we're really looking forward to using these maps in some future projects. We're continuing to apply this process to align with our values. So one of our next steps would be mapping process to increase access and land for emerging farmers, particularly supporting the commons, agrarian commons. So we're excited to be doing some mapping to do ecological conditions, the social conditions, to support new farmers getting on the land. Oh, Paula, were you going to check on this one?
Yeah, so we had uploaded a worksheet for you when the session was scheduled yesterday, and we'll make sure that this worksheet is uploaded, for this session too. But we put together a worksheet that sort of takes you through the process of your personal mapping your personal mycelia. And so this has on it the 4 steps. It has kind of the process that you go through, so that you can be in a position to move forward in the future using this. So again, that's a resource that's will be out there.
Awesome. And yeah, we do a lot of, we're talking about personal mycelia, and we just want you to know that we do this mapping as well. If you want a more professional map, or if there's a project that you think could be deepened by these kind of site assessments and moving into mapping for your property or for your communities, just want to put that out there. And we do a lot of concept designs and site plans, working on that higher level from our scale of permanence with soil and fencing, structures, crops, road access, water, topography. So it really allows you to visualize your intentions and phase out your land planning for your budget. So if there's we have a few more minutes. Do you want to say anything else, Paula, or answer a couple questions?
I guess let's go to questions. If people have questions, that would be great. Either put them in the chat or unmute yourself, and we'll try and answer them as best we can. We're really excited to try and move this work forward with you. So
yeah, and feel free to reach out. There is one question we didn't answer.
That's right, the one on the ancestors.
It looks like Hillary has left.
Okay.
But
any other thoughts on how this can be useful, either personally or in your community, or things that were particularly that you learned, this morning? You'd like to share?
I can share that. I know that I am going to go back to an organization, and I'm going to map out every member in our state, and just kind of start there and see where it goes to, because I didn't